ॐ नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. Welcome to Karma Yoga. In the previous chapter, we saw that each is great in his own place. In this third chapter of Karma Yoga, Swamiji teaches the secret of work. He starts the topic with various types of helps that human beings render to others, like physical, intellectual, spiritual. And he says that best help is spiritual, next is intellectual, and last is physical. Because physical help satisfies the human being only for a short period of time. Intellectual help can be useful for a longer time. And the best is the spiritual help, which will solve the problem for all the time. Swamiji says, next to spiritual comes intellectual help. The gift of knowledge is a far higher gift than that of food and clothes. It is ever higher than giving life to a man, because the real life of man consists of knowledge. Ignorance is death, knowledge is life. Life is of very little value if it is a life in the dark, groping through ignorance and misery. Next in order comes, of course, helping man physically. Therefore, in considering the question of helping others, we must always strive not to commit the mistake of thinking that physical help is the only help that can be given. Spirituality is the true basis of all activities of life. Swamiji explains that without this spiritual basis, mere intellectual and physical help are not sufficient. And the problems of humanity can only be solved by making men pure and of spiritual character. Only then world can be changed. Then Swamiji takes up the main theme of Gita, that is the non-attachment to the work. Work we all have to do, but how to perform the work so as to get not attached to the entanglement of transmigration. Swamiji explains that the character we have is the sum total of all the sanskaras. Every thought and action that we perform creates sanskaras. So they are like the inherent tendencies or the thought patterns that make our character. Swamiji explains, this is the one central idea in the Gita. Work incessantly, but be not attached to it. Sanskara can be translated very nearly by inherent tendency. Using the simile of a lake for the mind, every ripple, every wave that rises in the mind, when it subsides, does not die entirely, but leaves a mark and a future possibility of that wave coming out again. This mark, with the possibility of wave reappearing, is what is called sanskara. Once a man is truly and firmly established in good character, he is fit for higher step, that is desire for liberation, moksha, the desire to be free from the transmigration cycle. Swamiji says, by this continuous reflex of good thoughts, good impressions moving over the surface of the mind, the tendency for doing good becomes strong. And as the result, we feel able to control the indriyas, that is the sense organs or the nerve centers. Thus alone will character be established. Then alone a man gets to truth. Such a man is safe forever. He cannot do any evil. You may place him in any company, there will be no danger for him. There is a still higher state than having this good tendency, and that is the desire for liberation. You must remember that freedom of the soul is the goal of all yogas, and each one equally leads to the same result. By work alone, men may get to where Buddha got largely by meditation or Christ by prayer. Buddha was a working jnani, Christ was a bhakta, but the same goal was reached by both of them. So the same goal of self-realization can also be reached through Karma Yoga. Knowing that the entire nature is only for the education of the soul, be unattached to the work. Work like a master, not like a slave. Work through freedom and love, that is, work entirely unselfishly. Swami says, be unattached, let things work, let brain centers work incessantly, but let not a ripple conquer the mind. Work as if you were a stranger in this land, a sojourner, Work incessantly, but do not bind yourself. Bondage is terrible. So we have to learn the technique of doing work unattached so that it does not bind us. Attachment comes when results are expected. Working without expectation of results leads to freedom. Swamiji says, real existence, real knowledge, and real love are eternally connected with one another, the three in one. Where one of them is, the others also must be. They are three aspects of the one without a second, the existence, knowledge, bliss. When that existence becomes relative, we see it as the world. That knowledge becomes in its turn modified into knowledge of the things of the world. And that bliss forms the foundation of all true love known to the heart of man. Therefore, true love can never react so as to cause pain either to the lover or to the beloved. So, attachment binds us to the work, but detachment and working without getting entangled into the results of the work can lead us to the ultimate freedom. So, not merely work is bondage, but the attachment to the work is the bondage. If we analyze the conduct of people in this world, we see that might and mercy guide the conduct of man in the world. Might is selfishness, mercy is heaven itself. Most of the humanity is seen to be guided by might, power, to assert themselves. But unselfishness and humility and other selflessness virtues are, that is mercy, they are divine, that is heaven itself. Swamiji says there are two things which guide the conduct of man, might and mercy. The exercise of might is invariably the exercise of selfishness. All men and women try to make the most of whatever power or advantage they have. Mercy is heaven itself. To be good, we have all to be merciful. Even justice and right should stand on mercy. Then Swami says to convert work in Karma Yoga, there is also an alternate way. That is, if one believes in personal God, then all the work can be done as a worship. And that way, all the actions are worship to the personal God, and then one does not get attached to those actions. Thus, if work is done selflessly, then the soul qualifies for the ultimate liberation from transmigration cycle. So this self-sacrifice, Swamiji tells a story from Mahabharata about this complete self-sacrifice. After the Pandavas won the war at Kurukshetra, they conducted a great sacrifice and invited everybody to have the prasada, the sanctified food. And millions of people came and received gifts and had food. And everybody praised that this is the greatest sacrifice. And in that crowd came a small mongoose, and he was having half of his body as a golden color. That mongoose came and rolled on the ground where some food particles were fallen. And then he declared, no, this is not the greatest sacrifice. Everybody was stunned. They said, what can be bigger sacrifice than this? This is giving away of so much of gifts and food, etc. Then the mongoose told a story. Mongoose told that there was an old Brahmin in a village with his wife and two sons. Once there was a famine in the region and the family had nothing to eat. Some day they received a certain quantity of food and they made 4 parts of that food for themselves. Suddenly a guest appeared at their door. Now in India, guest is the manifestation of God, so he has to be served at all costs. So the owner of the house gave his part of the food to the guest. The guest ate the food, but he said that I have been hungry for 10 days and this small quantity has even increased my hunger even greater. So the wife gave her part and then the children also gave their part. So they appeased the hunger of the guest, and the guest departed, blessing them. So they had to again starve. That night, all the members of the family died because of the hunger. And some portion of that food given to that guest was fallen on the ground. Desmungus says that when I went and rolled over that ground, half of my body turned into gold. So, and since then I am searching for any other great sacrifice where I can turn the other half of my body into gold. But that has not happened even here, so this is not the greatest sacrifice. So this is a story about complete self-sacrifice. So Swamiji concludes this chapter by saying that Karma Yoga teaches us to give up everything for others without even thinking of any return. You say what Karma Yoga means, he says, even at the point of death, to help anyone without asking questions. Be cheated millions of times and never ask a question. Then he says that thus it is plain that to be an ideal householder is much more difficult task than to be an ideal sannyasi. The true life of work is indeed as hard as, if not harder than, the equally true life of renunciation. Thus he concludes this brief chapter on secret of work. The secret is to be unattached. Next he will take what is duty. Om Tat Sat.